Okay, let's unpack this. You're trying to master English, and maybe you love kicking back with a great movie or, binge watching a TV series.
Ah,
It feels like it should be the perfect way to learn, right? Just immerse yourself, soak it all in,
yeah, that's the dream scenario.
but then the show starts and boom, the words come really fast.
Mhm.
They blend together in ways you maybe never heard in your grammar class.
Definitely not like in the textbooks.
You try reading the subtitles, maybe even the English ones, but it still feels like you're sort of chasing the meaning, always a step behind.
It's a really common feeling, that frustration, like you should be learning more, but somehow it's just not clicking.
It's incredibly common, yeah.
It absolutely is, because the English you hear in structured courses or textbooks, it's often slowed down,
Right.
perfectly enunciated,
Yeah.
usually uses quite formal grammar,
Very clear.
very clear. But the English spoken by native speakers in movies and TV, well, that's a whole different beast, isn't it?
Right.
It's packed with contractions, words linking together really quickly, slang, idioms, rhythms. It can sound completely alien if you're not kind of prepared for it.
Alien is a good word for it sometimes.
And your brain, quite naturally, will tend towards the easiest path to understanding,
Which is usually reading.
which is often reading the subtitles, yeah, even if they're in English. And while that definitely helps you follow the plot,
Sure, you know what's going on.
it kind of bypasses the crucial skill of actively processing the sounds of natural, fast English. You're not really training your ear in the same way.
Exactly. So the big question then is, how do you actually transform that time you spend watching shows, which is enjoyable anyway, from just being passive into a genuinely powerful engine for boosting your English skill?
Right. Making it count.
That is the core mission for this deep dive. We've looked through the sources you've provided, and we're going to pull out the most sort of actionable strategies.
Practical steps.
Practical steps. We're not just going to say, watch TV in English. That's too vague.
Yeah. Not helpful enough.
We're going to break down how to watch it, specifically step by step, so that hopefully every minute can count towards real language improvement.
And this deep dive, it's really crafted specifically for you, the listener, the learner, who enjoys entertainment but really wants to leverage that enjoyment.
Make it work for you.
Make it work for you, yeah. Make serious progress in English. We're going to guide you through the whole process, starting with maybe the most fundamental decision.
Which is?
How to select content that is genuinely appropriate for your current English level. Not just what's popular or what your friends are watching. It has to fit you.
Right, because picking the wrong thing can actually backfire, can it? It can be counterproductive.
Totally.
Okay, so once you've got that sorted, we'll get into the nitty-gritty techniques. We'll show you how to train your ears to kind of deconstruct that fast, natural spoken English. To hear the actual words where before maybe you just heard a blur of sound.
Yeah, decoding the blur. And we'll tackle the often misunderstood role of subtitles. Are they helpful? Are they a crutch? Maybe both.
That's a big debate.
It is. We'll show you the specific methods from the sources for using them effectively, to actually aid learning rather than letting them become just a substitute for listening.
Okay. And it doesn't stop with just listening and understanding, does it? I mean, the ultimate goal for most people is speaking confidently.
Absolutely.
So we'll explore practical methods for using the very dialogue you hear in these shows and movies to practice and improve your own speaking skills. Everything from pronunciation to rhythm, intonation.
Getting that natural flow.
Exactly.
So by the time we wrap up this deep dive, the idea is that you should have a very clear step-by-step roadmap, a plan. You'll know how to choose the right movies or shows, how to listen actively to really train your ear, how to use subtitles strategically, and how to turn listening practice into active speaking practice. You'll be equipped, hopefully, to make your next streaming session a significant, tangible step forward in your English learning.
Okay, fantastic. So let's try and move beyond that feeling of being overwhelmed by fast native speech. Let's shift our focus and dive headfirst into the very first crucial decision, selecting the right content for your level.
Right. Choosing material that's a good fit is absolutely foundational. It really is. And it's where a lot of learners inadvertently trip up.
Yeah, I can see that. It's tempting, isn't it, to just pick the latest hit show everyone's talking about.
Or a classic movie you love.
Yeah.
Regardless of the language difficulty.
Yeah.
But if the content is just too far above your current level,
Yeah.
well, you'll feel completely lost.
And that leads straight to frustration, discouragement, and ultimately you'll probably just give up using that particular show for learning, or maybe even give up on the whole idea.
Yeah, it poisons the well a bit. And on the flip side, If the content is too easy,
You get bored.
you get bored. You're not challenged. You're not really pushing yourself to acquire new vocabulary or new structures or hear different sounds.
So you're not learning much.
Not really pushing the boundaries. So the sources really emphasize this critical point, the need to find that perfect balance.
The sweet spot.
The sweet spot, exactly. It's about finding content that is challenging enough to offer new learning opportunities, but still accessible enough that you can actually engage with it meaningfully without feeling totally underwater.
Okay, challenging but not impossible.
Precisely. And thankfully, the sources give us a wonderfully practical and actually quite easy to implement test for finding this balance.
Yeah.
It's called the 50-70% rule.
The 50-70% rule. Okay, how does that work?
The idea is simple. You watch a short segment, maybe just 30 seconds, maybe a minute from a movie or show without any subtitles at all.
Just listening.
Just listening. And you ask yourself, based purely on what I heard, do I understand roughly 50 to 70% of the dialogue?
50 to 70%. That seems like a very specific range. Why is that the sweet spot? What's magical about 50-70?
Well, it's key because it strikes that balance we just talked about. If you understand less than 50%,
Too hard.
it's probably too difficult. There are just too many unknown words, maybe too much unfamiliar grammar, or the speech is simply too fast or unclear for your current ear. You don't have enough context to even guess the meaning of the unknown parts.
Right, it just becomes noise.
It quickly becomes overwhelming guesswork, yeah. You're just lost.
Right. You can't really build on what you know if you know less than half of it to begin with.
Precisely. You're missing too many bricks in the wall to see the structure. Like conversely, if you understand more than 70%,
Too easy.
it might mean the content is a little too easy for optimal learning. You're mostly confirming what you already know.
Yeah.
Which is, fine for reinforcement, good for confidence.
It was good.
Feels good. But you're not exposing yourself to enough new language to really drive significant improvement. You're not expanding your vocabulary much or getting used to more complex structures or faster speech patterns.
Okay. So the 50-70% range, that ensures there is enough known language, the 50 to 70% you understand, to provide a solid base of context.
Exactly.
You understand the general gist of what's happening, who's talking about what, the overall situation. And this understanding of the known stuff helps you make educated guesses about the unknown parts, that 30 to 50% you didn't initially catch.
Perfectly put. You hear a sentence you only partially understand, but because you got most of it and you see what's happening on screen, you can often infer the meaning of the one or two words you missed.
From the context.
From the surrounding dialogue and the visual context. This is how native speakers acquire language too, right? They use context constantly to learn new things. The 50-70% rule ensures you have that crucial context available while still providing ample new language to learn from.
It makes perfect sense now. It's challenging, but it feels achievable, not overwhelming.
That's the goal.
And to help you, the listener, get started with finding content that might actually fit this rule, the sources offer some really excellent level-specific recommendations. Should we run through those, maybe with some more specific examples?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So for beginners, the absolute priority has to be clarity, simplicity, and strong visual context.
Makes sense.
You need language that's spoken clearly at a manageable pace, with straightforward stories you can follow visually. Animated movies are often a fantastic starting point.
Like Pixar movies.
Exactly. Things like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, or even newer ones like Encanto, perhaps. The characters usually have very clear, often slightly exaggerated pronunciation.
Right, they need to be understood by kids.
Precisely. And the dialogue is usually less complex than in, say, in adult drama. It focuses on concrete actions, clear emotional states. Plus, the animation itself provides really strong visual cues that support comprehension.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Toy Story. Buzz Lightyear, when he first arrives, his speech is very distinct, very deliberate.
Very clear. To infinity and beyond.
Yeah. And Woody's dialogue is maybe a bit faster, but still pretty clear. And the plot revolves around toys and adventures that are just easy to follow visually. You see them running, jumping, falling flowers. The actions match the words pretty closely.
Exactly. Another great option for beginners, according to the sources, are sitcoms. Specifically, sitcoms that focus on everyday life and common situations.
Friends comes to mind immediately.
Friends is the classic recommendation, and for good reason.
Yeah.
While, the pace can sometimes pick up, the core vocabulary really revolves around daily interactions, relationships, work, social situations.
Stuff you can relate to.
Relatable stuff. And the humor often comes from misunderstandings or reactions that you can see clearly on the characters' faces,
Right.
which adds another layer of context. Modern Family is another good example mentioned. Following the lives of this large, diverse family, the situations are very common. You see characters interacting in familiar settings, homes, schools, restaurants. Very grounded.
And sitcoms are great because the episodes are usually self-contained or follow simple arcs. They feel less daunting than trying to tackle a long, complex movie right away.
Definitely more manageable chunks. And for learners at a very basic level, or maybe even young adult learners just starting out, the sources suggest something interesting. Content specifically designed for children, which can be surprisingly effective for adult learners too.
Like what?
Shows like Peppa Pig or Bluey.
Peppa Pig. Really?
Yeah, don't let the fact they're for very young kids fool you. Peppa Pig, for instance, uses extremely simple sentence structures, like really basic.
Okay.
It has a very limited core vocabulary that gets repeated often, which is great for reinforcement. And every single action or object is usually clearly shown on screen. The narrator often describes exactly what is happening.
Wow, okay. Maximum context.
Maximum context, minimal ambiguity. Bluey is maybe a step up, slightly more complex, but still features very clear dialogue. It focuses on imaginative play, family interactions, uses common everyday language. Honestly, watching a 10-minute episode of Peppa Pig multiple times can be incredibly effective for drilling basic vocabulary and sentence patterns in a fun, low-stress way.
Okay, I'm sold on giving Peppa a try. So, for beginners, clarity, simplicity, visual support, relatable everyday topics.
Got it. Now, what about intermediate learners? You've got a foundational vocabulary you can handle a bit more complexity.
Right. Intermediate learners can start wading into more natural-paced conversations and a wider range of vocabulary, but you still want relatively clear contexts, generally. TV dramas that aren't overly complex plot-wise but feature natural conversational dialogue are often a good fit here.
Like what kind of dramas?
Well, something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine is mentioned. It's a police precinct comedy, really, but the core interactions between the characters are fast, they're witty, they use a lot of common conversational English, including jokes and banter. So more natural speed and interaction.
Yeah, but the setting of the police station, the cases provides a kind of structure. The Office, the U.S. version is often cited, is another interesting one. It features improvisation and very realistic workplace dialogue.
Oh yeah, famously so.
You get interruptions, overlapping speech, but the overall setting and the character relationships provide a lot of context. You know who these people are, what their dynamics are.
Right, and The Office is known for that sort of awkward realism. You really hear how people might actually talk in an office setting, but the situations are often so visually clear, someone doing something silly, a reaction shot, that you can often understand the meaning, even if you miss a few specific words.
Exactly. The visual humor helps bridge the gap. Light comedies, like The Big Bang Theory or How I Met Your Mother, are also suggested for this level.
Okay.
The Big Bang Theory, despite having main characters who are scientists, actually features surprisingly accessible core dialogue in their everyday interactions and relationship discussions. The scientific jargon is often simplified or explained for comedic effect.
Right, it's part of the joke, usually.
Usually. And How I Met Your Mother uses framing devices, narration, that can sometimes add layers, but the core conversations between the main group of friends are very natural. They cover dating, careers, friendship, all very relatable topics for many learners.
And the sources highlighted something I found interesting for intermediate learners: reality shows, specifically things like MasterChef or The Great British Bake Off. My first thought was, wouldn't spontaneous speech be too hard?
That's a really valid thought because reality shows can have unpredictable moments, lots of fast, overlapping speech. However, cooking shows like these often have a very clear, predictable structure. There are specific tasks. There are clear instructions given by the judges or the hosts. The contestants describe their process. Then there's feedback. The language used is often very practical, very focused.
On cooking.
Yeah, describing ingredients, methods. You go chop, stir, bake, saute, describing tastes, textures. And crucially, you see what they're talking about.
Right. The visual context is huge.
Immense. The context of cooking, presenting the food, the judges tasting it, it provides massive support for understanding the language being used, even if it's spoken spontaneously.
Okay. So it's the combination of that relatively focused vocabulary, food, cooking, and the really strong visual context that makes them accessible, even with the spontaneous speech element. That's a great insight.
It seems to be the key for those shows.
Okay, finally, let's talk about advanced learners. You're pretty comfortable with everyday English. You can handle faster speech, more complex grammar. What's next?
For advanced learners, the goal is really to push into even faster pace, more nuanced language, complex sentence structures, and perhaps more topic-specific or specialized vocabulary. This is where movies with rapid-fire, real-life speech patterns come in. Think of films like Inception or The Social Network, maybe even action movies that have surprisingly dense dialogue, like The Dark Knight. The conversations can be very fast. Characters might interrupt each other more frequently. The vocabulary often goes beyond just daily interactions into themes related to, say, science fiction, technology, finance, or intricate plots.
These are definitely less forgiving. You really have to be listening keenly, paying close attention.
Exactly. You're training your ear to process information at pretty much native speed, often with minimal redundancy or, fewer direct visual cues for every single word being said.
Right.
News programs and documentaries are also excellent resources for advanced learners. Things like BBC News, CNN reports, or documentaries, maybe TED Talks.
Why those specifically?
They expose you to more formal speech patterns, journalistic language, a wider range of accents potentially, and a vast array of vocabulary related to current events, science, history, culture, politics, whatever the topic is. Plus, the delivery speed is often quite high, mimicking how you might consume information in the real world through news media.
Mm-hmm. And TV dramas with complex plots and sophisticated dialogue. Things like Breaking Bad, Sherlock. Maybe even period dramas like Downton Abbey.
Yes, absolutely. These often feature intricate character interactions, moral complexities, and language that uses more sophisticated vocabulary, nuanced expressions, idioms, and complex sentence structures. Sherlock, for instance, famously features incredibly fast deductions and explanations from the main character.
You have to keep up.
You really do. It requires advanced comprehension just to follow the thread of his thought process. Breaking Bad is interesting because it has characters from very different backgrounds using varying registers of language from, precise scientific explanations to very casual, sometimes crude slang, depending on the situation and who's talking.
So you get exposure to different styles of speech within one show.
Exactly. More challenging, more varied.
Okay, so the actionable step for you, the listener, right now is consider your current English level honestly. Browse your streaming services or your movie library using these kinds of categories as a guide. Pick something that genuinely sparks your interest because motivation is absolutely key.
You have to want to watch it.
You have to want to watch it. And then apply that 50-70% test to a short clip. Listen without subtitles for maybe a minute. If you feel like you're catching roughly half to three-quarters of the dialogue, you've probably found a good starting point. Don't be afraid to try a few different things until you find that sweet spot for you.
That's the crucial first step. Selection. Once you've identified your content, though, the next challenge emerges pretty quickly. Actually understanding that fast-flowing natural English. It's the reason so many people feel like subtitles are essential. But how do you really train your ear to hear what's being said, even when it's flying by?
Because, as you mentioned earlier, native speakers just don't speak like they're dictating a book, do they? Words aren't these neat, isolated islands.
Not at all.
They crash into each other, sounds change or disappear entirely. This connected speech phenomenon is perhaps one of the biggest hurdles for learners, I think.
I agree. We learn words individually, often from text, but then we hear them all blended together in speech.
Yeah.
Take a really simple phrase like going to. In fast, natural speech, it almost always becomes go ba.
Right, we all know that one.
Or want to becomes wanna. Got to becomes gotta. But it's not just those common contractions. Sounds at the end of one word can blend seamlessly with sounds at the beginning of the next. For example, get out might sound more like Jerome.
Yeah.
Or a question like, did you eat yet? Might come out sounding like, did you eat yet?
Did you eat yet? Okay.
And if your ear is listening specifically for the distinct sounds, did you eat, did you yet? It simply won't recognize the actual sound ditchy. It doesn't match the pattern you're expecting.
It's like learning a kind of secret code for spoken English. It feels that way sometimes.
It can feel that way. But the good news is, this code is absolutely learnable. The sources provide a really systematic 3-step listening exercise, specifically designed to help you crack this code and train your ear to recognize these blended sounds and reductions.
Okay, a 3-step exercise. What's step 1?
Step 1. Take a very short clip from your chosen movie or show. And the sources recommend keeping it really short, like 10 to 15 seconds maximum.
It's
tiny. Listen to this clip without any subtitles at all, just the raw audio.
Okay. That might feel a bit daunting at first, listening blind.
It can. And the key here, really, is to manage your expectations. The goal isn't to understand everything perfectly the first time. That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
The goal is simply to listen for anything you do recognize. Try to catch familiar words or phrases, get a feel for the overall rhythm, the speed, the intonation. It's just an initial assessment of what your ear is already picking up naturally. It is absolutely okay if you understand very little on this first listen. That's completely normal and expected.
Okay, so step 1 is just a baseline listen. No pressure. What's step 2?
Step 2 is where the decoding really begins. You listen to that exact same 10-15-second clip again, but this time you turn the English subtitles on.
Ah, okay. Now you get to see the script.
Yes, and this is where you make those crucial connections between sound and text. As you listen, you see the written words appearing on the screen. Now, you need to actively notice how those written words actually sound when they are spoken naturally and quickly.
So you're comparing what you hear to what you read.
Exactly. Pay close attention to where words seem to blend together. Notice where sounds might be dropped or changed. Notice where common contractions like gonna or wanna appear in the subtitles, where perhaps your brain was still expecting to hear the full going to or want to.
So this is where you bridge that gap between the written word you learn and the spoken sound you're actually hearing. You're seeing, what do you want to do tonight? But you're hearing something much closer to what I want to do tonight.
Precisely.
And your brain finally makes the link. Ah, that sound means those words.
Exactly. That's the core insight you gain from step 2. You're consciously mapping that blurry, fast-spoken sound to the distinct written words. The sources specifically highlight this kind of transformation. You see, what do you want to do tonight? While simultaneously hearing the reduced flowing sound, what I want to do tonight. By repeatedly seeing and hearing this happen, you start to train your brain that what I wanna means what do you want to. It's incredibly powerful for training your ear to recognize spoken English as it's actually used by natives. You're not just seeing words, you're seeing the sound of those words represented in text.
It's almost like having a little translator for connected speech right there on the screen, showing you what the sounds correspond to. Okay, so step 2 is about seeing and hearing together, actively noticing the difference. What about step 3?
Step 3 takes you back to pure listening again. You listen to the same 10-15-second clip one more time, but without the subtitles again.
Okay, and the goal now is?
The goal now is to see how much more you can understand purely by listening, leveraging the understanding and the connections you just made in step 2. You've now consciously linked the spoken sounds to the written words. So in step 3, you're practicing recognizing those sounds and immediately understanding the words they represent without needing to read along. You're basically testing and reinforcing that new connection in your brain. Did it stick?
So you kind of loop these 3 steps with that same short clip. Listen without, listen with subtitles, noticing the links, listen without again until you feel like, okay, I pretty much understand most of that just by hearing it now.
Precisely. And the reason you use very short clips, just 10 or 15 seconds, is that it makes this repetitive process really manageable. You can listen to a 10-second clip 5 times, 10 times, without feeling like you're spending forever on just one tiny task.
Yeah, you don't get fatigued.
Exactly. This focused, repetitive exposure on a small chunk of real, authentic English is what builds that sort of muscle memory in your ear and brain. It helps you learn to quickly process connected speech and natural pronunciation patterns.
I can really see how doing this regularly, even for just a few short clips each day, would start to make a significant difference over time. You're actively training your brain to decode faster speech patterns. It might feel slow at first, focusing on just 10 seconds, but imagine doing that with maybe 5 or 10 different clips over the course of a week. That adds up to significant targeted practice.
It accumulates surprisingly quickly. This method is designed to be systematic and effective, directly targeting that common difficulty of understanding rapid, natural speech. And this brings us quite naturally to the role of subtitles more generally, which were obviously essential in step 2 of that exercise, but as we touched on, can be a bit of a double-edged sword.
Right. That's something I hear debated a lot. People sometimes say you shouldn't use subtitles at all if you really want to improve your listening. Is there truth to that?
Well, there's some truth to it, but it's also a bit too simplistic, I think. The common pitfall, as the sources definitely acknowledge, is overusing subtitles. Especially subtitles in your native language, obviously.
Yeah, that's just translation.
That's translation practice. But even constantly using English subtitles without changing your approach can hinder listening development. If you only ever watch with subtitles always on, particularly if your reading speed is faster than your listening comprehension speed, which is true for many learners.
Your brain cheats.
Your brain takes the path of least resistance. It will prioritize reading the text on the screen because it's easier and faster to get the meaning that way, and it won't put in the necessary effort to actively process the sounds of the spoken English. You're essentially practicing your reading speed, not your listening comprehension skills.
Okay, so just having them switched on all the time without thinking about it is the main problem. But you said earlier that used correctly, they can be a powerful tool. So how do we use them the right way, strategically?
The sources outline a method that integrates subtitles strategically, and it builds nicely on the previous listening practice idea. Step 1 in this method: watch a section of the movie or show, maybe a slightly longer scene this time, perhaps 1 to 3 minutes with the English subtitles turned on.
Okay, so unlike the pure listening exercise where you listen without subtitles first, here you actually start with the subtitles on.
Exactly, because the purpose here is slightly different. Here, the primary goal is to connect the spoken sound to the written word, yes, but also to acquire new vocabulary and new phrases in their natural context.
Ah, okay. Learning new stuff.
Learning new stuff. As you listen and watch, you see the words on the screen at the moment they're spoken. This helps solidify that link between the sound and its written form. And crucially, when you encounter a new word or expression, you see it written down right at the exact moment you hear it, and you see the situation in which it's being used. This simultaneous input, hearing it, seeing the word written, and seeing the context on screen, makes it much, much easier to understand and remember the meaning compared to just looking up an isolated word later in a dictionary.
That makes total sense. You're not just learning the word, you're learning how it's used in a sentence, in a situation with a certain tone.
Right, you're building a much richer, more nuanced understanding of that word or phrase. So that's step 1. Step 2, watch that same 1 3-minute section again, but this time,
Subtitles off.
subtitles off. Turn the English subtitles off.
This is the test phase.
It is. Now that you've seen the script, you've hopefully understood the context, maybe picked up some new vocabulary in step 1. Now you are forced to rely solely on your listening skills.
No safety net.
No safety net. You're actively trying to recognize the words and phrases you just encountered, but without the crutch of the text. This step pushes your ear to work harder and helps you check how much that learned vocabulary and those speech patterns you can now recognize purely by sound. It's pure listening practice, but it's informed by your initial viewing with the subtitles.
It feels like you're kind of cementing the learning from step 1. You saw it and heard it together, and now you're practicing hearing it again without the visual text cue, making sure it's stuck.
Oh, precisely. And then step 3 in this particular subtitle method introduces an active production element, which is really valuable: shadowing.
Okay, we mentioned shadowing briefly earlier in the context of the listening exercise, but let's go deeper now. What exactly is shadowing?
Shadowing, in this context, means you pause the video right after a character says a sentence or maybe just a short phrase, and you immediately repeat it yourself out loud.
Just copy them.
Just copy them.
Yeah.
But the goal isn't just to say the words. The goal is to copy the character's pronunciation, their rhythm, and their intonation as accurately as you possibly can.
Okay, so if a character says, like, I'll be there in 5 minutes, with a certain urgency, I pause and I try to say, I'll be there in 5 minutes. With that exact same speed and tone.
Exactly. And pay really close attention to how they connect words. The source gave that great example, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Often, native speakers won't pronounce every word distinctly. The in 5 minutes part might blend together.
Yeah, it might sound like in 5 minutes.
Something like that. And the stress and rhythm might not be what you expect if you just read the words individually on a page. A native speaker might say it quickly, perhaps blending in 5 together, maybe giving the word 5 a slight stress and an elongated vowel sound. I'll be there in 5 minutes. By trying to mimic that specific sound and rhythm, you are literally training your mouth and tongue muscles to produce English sounds more naturally. You're moving beyond just repeating words. You're actively copying the music of the language, the stress, the rhythm, the intonation patterns.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about saying the individual sounds correctly, like vowels and consonants, but getting the overall flow and melody right.
Exactly. Getting the prosody right.
So this combined subtitle method step 1. Watch with English subtitles to learn words and link sound to text. Step 2. Watch again without subtitles to practice pure listening comprehension. And step 3. Shadow key phrases to practice pronunciation and rhythm. That seems incredibly comprehensive. It covers a lot of bases.
It really does. Watching with subtitles first helps you decode the language and learn new things in context. Watching again without subtitles forces you to practice recognizing the spoken form under pressure, relying only on your ear. And then shadowing activates your speaking muscles, reinforcing the connection between what you hear and how you actually produce the sounds yourself. It's a powerful cycle that can improve both your recognition of spoken English and your own pronunciation and fluency when you speak.
Wow. Okay. So we've covered choosing the right content. We've got a systematic way to practice listening to understand fast speech. And now we have a strategic method for using subtitles to help with both listening and learning vocabulary, plus introducing speaking practice through shadowing. That leads us very naturally to the next stage, doesn't it? Actively using movies and TV to improve your actual speaking skills more broadly. How do we bridge that gap fully from input to output?
It's such a critical step. Listening and understanding are absolutely fundamental, but ultimately, if you can't produce the language yourself, express your own ideas, you haven't fully mastered it, have you?
Right. Speaking is the goal for many.
It is. Fortunately, the same content we've been talking about with these movies and TV shows provides excellent material for speaking practice as well. And the sources offer two very effective methods to leverage this material for speaking improvement.
And the first one is shadowing again, right? You mentioned it's versatile.
Yes, shadowing is so valuable, it really serves two purposes. It's a listening aid, helping you tune your ear to how words are pronounced and connected in natural speech. But it's also a direct speaking exercise. When using it purely as a speaking exercise, the focus is entirely on mimicry.
Okay.
You choose a sentence, or maybe just a short, impactful phrase from your movie or show. Listen really carefully to the character delivering that line. Pay close attention to their pronunciation, yes, but also their rhythm, their intonation, the emotion in their voice. Are they happy, sad, angry, sarcastic?
All the nuances.
All the nuances. And then you try to say it exactly like them.
Mimic everything.
Mimic everything. You can pause the video and repeat immediately after them. Or, for a slightly bigger challenge, you can try to speak at the same time as the character, like you're their shadow speaking along with them. The goal is always to match their speech patterns as closely as possible.
Okay.
The sources gave that simple but really perfect example. Hey, long time no see.
Right. A very common, natural phrase.
Very common.
Yeah.
Now imagine hearing that said quickly, casually, with a friendly tone, maybe a slight upward inflection at the end, like a greeting. Hey, long time no see.
Yeah, you can hear it.
If you just read those words on a page, hey, long time no see. You might say it very flatly, very robotically.
Right, word by word.
Word by word. But practicing saying it with that specific native rhythm and intonation helps you internalize not just the words themselves, but the feel of the phrase, how it's actually used. You learn how to deploy it naturally in a conversation. You're training your mouth and tongue muscles, yes, but you're also training yourself to sound more natural, more friendly, or whatever emotion the original character was conveying. It builds fluency by getting your mouth used to forming common English phrases quickly and smoothly.
It's almost like singing along to a song to get the rhythm and the pronunciation right. You're using the native speaker in the show as your personal vocal coach.
That's a fantastic analogy. You're learning the melody, the tune of the language, not just the lyrics.
Okay. So shadowing is powerful for pronunciation and fluency. What's the second speaking exercise the sources mention?
The second one is role play, which takes things a step further into more interactive practice, even though you're still interacting with the screen.
Role play, using a movie or a TV show scene, how exactly does that work?
You pick a short conversation or a scene from your chosen content that has dialogue between two or more characters. Let's say character A and character B are talking.
Okay.
You first decide which character you want to be. Let's say you choose to be character B.
Okay, I'm character B. Got it.
Right. Then you play the scene. When character A delivers their line on screen, you pause the video immediately after they finish speaking.
Pause.
Then it's your turn. You deliver character B's line yourself, out loud.
Ah, I see. So I'm not just repeating B's line after hearing B say it. I'm practicing my response to what character A just said.
Exactly. You're stepping into the conversation.
Yeah.
And again, just like with shadowing, the goal isn't just to say the words of character B's line correctly. It's to try and match the tone, the emotion, and the speed of the original character B in that specific moment in the scene.
So if character A says something surprising or maybe annoying, and character B in the show responds with, say, an exasperated sigh, and then delivers their line with a certain tone of frustration.
Then you try to deliver that line with the same sigh, the same exasperation in your voice.
Okay. This sounds definitely more challenging than just shadowing a single line in isolation. You have to process what the other character just said and deliver your line with the right timing, the right feeling.
It is more complex, absolutely. And that's precisely its value. It moves you beyond just repeating single sentences. You're practicing responding in context, even if it's a pre-written, scripted context. It helps you think about how language is actually used in interaction, how your line relates logically and emotionally to the previous line, how to convey meaning and feeling through your voice. It's practicing conversational flow and delivery in a way that shadowing alone doesn't quite capture.
I can really see how this would help build confidence for actual conversations. You're not just talking at yourself in the mirror, you're having a kind of simulated conversation, albeit with a screen character. It helps you embody the language more actively.
It absolutely does. You're actively using the language in a simulated back-and-forth exchange. Regular practice with both of these techniques, shadowing for refining pronunciation and fluency, and role play for practicing conversational rhythm and delivery using material that's appropriate for your level, will significantly accelerate your progress in speaking. You're taking that rich, authentic input from movies and TV and actively turning it into your own practiced output.
Wow. Okay. We've really gone on a journey here, haven't we? From identifying that common challenge of understanding fast English, right through to a complete actionable system for using movies and TV shows to improve both listening and speaking. It really transforms it from just passive entertainment into a structured, active learning experience.
That's the goal.
Maybe we should quickly recap the core techniques we've covered just to crystallize it for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, so a quick summary is good. If you're feeling that frustration with understanding native English in media, or if you want to sound more natural when you speak, the sources lay out some clear, powerful steps you can take. First, and maybe most importantly, that crucial step of selection.
Right.
Use the 50-70% understanding rule listening without subtitles as your guide to find content that challenges you just enough without totally overwhelming you.
And remember those level-specific suggestions we talked about. For beginners, aim for clarity. Things like animated movies, Toy Story, Finding Nemo, everyday sitcoms, Friends, Modern Family, or even those simple kids shows, Peppa Pig, Bluey, can be great.
For intermediate learners, you can handle faster, more natural conversations. Look at light dramas, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Office, comedies, The Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother, or those visually supported reality shows like cooking competitions, MasterChef, The Great British Bake Off.
And for advanced learners, you need to push your limits. Try fast-paced films, Inception, The Social Network, news and documentaries, BBC News, TED Talks, or TV dramas with complex plots and sophisticated dialogue. Breaking Bad, Sherlock.
Okay, once you have your content selected, you need to systematically train your ears to decode that fast speech. Use the 3-step listening exercise on very short clips, 10 to 15 seconds. Step 1, listen first without any subtitles.
Just listen.
Step 2, listen again with English subtitles, consciously noticing the connected speech, the reductions linking the sound to the text.
Make the connection.
Step 3, listen again without subtitles to test and reinforce your improved comprehension based on what you just learned. Repeat as needed.
Got it. And use subtitles strategically, not just leave them on all the time like a crutch. For learning new vocabulary and linking sound to text, watch a slightly longer section with English subtitles first.
Right. Learn mode.
Then, for pure listening practice, watch that same section again without any subtitle.
Test mode.
Test mode. And throughout all of this, integrate shadowing. Pausing the video and repeating lines immediately after the characters, trying to copy their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation.
Shadowing is key. It's vital for both helping you recognize the sounds better and for improving your own speaking production.
And then for dedicated speaking practice, you can continue shadowing individual lines or phrases to really refine your accent and fluency. And also actively practice role play. Select scenes with dialogue, choose a character, and deliver that character's lines yourself, trying to match the original performance's tone and speed in response to the other character.
These aren't just abstract ideas, are they? They are concrete, practical techniques that you can literally start implementing today with the next show you watch. They really can transform watching movies and TV from something passive into a dynamic, engaging, and highly effective way to learn and significantly improve your English skills.
All right, fantastic. Now that you, our listener, have this entire toolkit laid out, it's really time to put it into action, isn't it? So here is your challenge for today.
Okay, step 1. Go find a movie or a TV show that genuinely interests you. Using the guidelines we discussed, the 50-70% rule, the level suggestions try to determine if it might be a good fit for your current level. Once you think you found something promising, pick a very short clip, just 10 to 15 seconds long. Maybe it's a moment with dialogue you particularly liked, or just a random sample to test out.
Okay, step 2. Apply that three-step listening exercise to that specific clip. Listen once without any subtitles, then listen again with the English subtitles on, paying really close attention to how the spoken words connect and sound different from their written form. Notice any reductions or blended sounds. Finally, listen one last time without the subtitles and just see how much more you can understand purely by listening this time.
And step 3. From that same 10-15-second clip, choose just one sentence. Maybe it was one that sounded particularly fast, or one that had some interesting connected speech you noticed. Pause the video right after the character says that sentence and shadow it. Say that single sentence out loud, trying your absolute best to say it exactly like the character did, focus intensely on mimicking their pronunciation and their rhythm.
And after you've done that, we would genuinely love for you to take just a moment to reflect on the experience. Think about it. What show or movie did you choose? What was that short clip about? What felt like the hardest part of that whole process for you? Was it catching the words on the very first listen without subtitles? Was it tricky noticing exactly how many words were connected when the subtitles were on? Or was it trying to get your mouth to make the sounds exactly like the character when you did the shadowing?
Yeah, and did you notice any specific new words or new phrases or interesting speech patterns that you want to try and remember or practice more? Thinking about these kinds of questions will really help solidify what you learned from that short exercise. And maybe consider this provocative thought as well. You probably spent, 5 or 10 minutes really focusing intensely on just 10 or 15 seconds of dialogue? Think about how much rich, authentic, real-world English is actually packed into that tiny little sliver of time.
It's dense.
It's incredibly dense. All those nuances of pronunciation, rhythm, connected speech, vocabulary used in context, natural sentence structures. When you shift from just passively watching to actively engaging with the language in this focused way, you unlock a vast amount of learning potential that was always there, right in front of you, just waiting to be discovered. Even a scene you've watched many times before can become a completely new and exciting learning opportunity when you approach it with these kinds of active techniques.
It really does make you appreciate the incredible density and complexity of natural spoken language, doesn't it? It's not just a simple string of words. It's this complex, layered tapestry of sound and meaning and rhythm.
Precisely. Now, today we focus very heavily on using movies and TV shows, where you typically have visual cues, you can see the actors' faces, their actions, and you often have subtitles available as a tool.
Right. Lots of support.
Lots of support. But what about situations where you don't have those aids? What about something like, say, making or receiving a phone call in English?
Oh, phone calls. Yeah, that's a huge challenge for so many English learners, myself included sometimes. It's purely auditory, isn't it?
Purely audio.
You can't see the other person's face. You can't see their gestures. You can't rely on any visual context at all to help you understand or to help them understand you. It's just your voice and their voice.
It requires a different, and I think in some ways a more challenging set of listening and speaking skills. You need very specific strategies and language tools for navigating those purely audio conversations effectively. But don't worry, we're not going to just point out the problem and leave you hanging.
Huh. Good to know. Because that is exactly why our next deep dive is going to be all about building your confidence and competence in handling phone calls in English. We're going to give you the essential language and the practical techniques you need.
Yeah, we'll cover really practical things like how to start and end phone conversations politely and naturally, moving beyond just a basic hello and goodbye. We'll give you lots of useful phrases for common phone tasks, things like making appointments, leaving clear messages, asking for specific information, or making sure you get connected to the right person or department.
And critically, I think we'll equip you with strategies for dealing with perhaps the most stressful part of phone calls for learners: misunderstandings.
When you just don't catch what they said.
Exactly. How do you politely ask someone to repeat themselves without sounding rude? How do you clarify information effectively? How do you confirm that you've understood correctly when you can't see their face nodding or shaking their head?
It's a completely different skill set from face-to-face communication or even from video calls where you still have some visual feedback. And mastering it is really essential for so many real-world situations, work or personal life. You absolutely don't want to miss that next deep dive if phone calls in English make you even a little bit nervous.
Definitely sounds crucial. Okay, so You've got your challenge for today using movies and TV. Go pick your clip, try the three-step listening, and definitely shadow that sentence. And just remember that learning a language is a journey. It takes time, and ideally, it should be a journey you actually enjoy.
Yeah, finding the fun is important.
Finding the fun, integrating activities you already love, like watching great shows and movies, but using these active techniques we discussed today makes the whole process not only much more effective, but also genuinely more fun and engaging.
So start watching and start practicing today. And be ready for our next session, where we're going to tackle the challenge of English phone calls head-on together.
Until then, keep listening, keep talking, keep practicing, and most importantly, enjoy the process of learning English.
See you next time.